Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing today? I have a bit of a cold, so this is Eric. It's not someone else standing in, pretending to be me. I apologize if it's a little distracting, but such as it is, we're ready to go. We have another full agenda, so I think we want to get things underway.
So this is Jason. A couple of few housekeeping things. Unlike the last couple of sessions, we have a couple of items that folks can download this time. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with how these types of things work with GoToWebinar, it's actually pretty straightforward. You have your little control panel in the upper right-hand side of your screen. There should be a triangle next to handouts, and that's what you want to click on, so the triangle faces down. And then a little menu will pop up with 3 items, and you can pick and choose what you'd like to download, but we highly encourage you, if you're interested in either being able to review this material after today's call, or if you have some colleagues you think might be interested in some of this content as well, please take advantage of the opportunity to download the handouts. It's neater and it's easier for folks to access the stuff now than for us to send everything out as a bundle after the call. One other housekeeping thing: if you are having any technical issues with either the audio or the presentation, then unfortunately we don't have any control over that, and the easiest, best thing for you to do is go ahead and log out and log back in. It's the whole reset thing. Typically that will fix whatever issue you might be running into. So otherwise, if you have questions as we're going through the content today, if you have questions or comments about stuff that we're covering, of course everybody's on mute. We can do one of 2 things. Our preferred thing is to have you just type a question in the questions box, and again, right hand side, questions, little triangle, click on that. It'll prompt you to type something in, and I'll be monitoring that. If you have something that's really lengthy, let me know, and we can see if we can unmute you, as long as that's convenient for you and you're not, in a construction zone or something like that. And we can unmute your line and have you contribute to the conversation as well. All right, I think that's it for housekeeping. Now, should we start with the poll?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Laurel with Micah. As Jason just said, there are going to be opportunities to chime in. One of those opportunities is towards the end of our agenda, where we open it up for updates from you guys. They can be local or things you're working on at a state or federal level. So take a minute, let us know if there's anything that you want to update us about, us being Micah, us being everyone else on the call. If you select yes, then we'll come back at the end of the call and either unmute you or read any kind of comments that you want to give. So the poll is now open. Are we getting something?
Yeah. Well, we've got multiple things happening. We have people just joining us. So for those of you who are just joining us, we just launched a poll question, and we're just interested to see if there's any updates you'd like to provide later in today's webinar. No obligation, and of course, there's no way for us to connect your response to who you are. So don't feel like if you say, oh yeah, I have content, and then take it through later and then say, I'm not so sure about sharing it, that's totally fine.
All right, are we good?
Not that many people have responded yet.
That's okay. We'll keep moving. We have
pensive crowd.
We have a lot to talk about.
Everybody's very, I think Eric's right. Everybody's very pensive today, and maybe tentative. So 2/3, 1/3 split, with 2/3 of the folks said no thank you, and 1/3 of you said, yeah, maybe you have something you'd like to share later. So we will keep that in mind when we get to that part of the webinar today.
All right. And you should now all be seeing on your screen, for those of you who are on the webinar, our agenda for today. If you're calling in, you're not going to be missing a lot. We just have a couple of visuals up. This is all being recorded, and we will share it with the group and put it on our YouTube channel later. So if you missed something, you can always go back and watch it. as well as send it on to other staffers or other people who may be interested in the content on today's call. This is also one of the downloads that Jason mentioned earlier. We do have this as a handout that you can download and follow along in case you're not on the screen and able to see what we're showing you. So just real quick, our agenda, which was emailed out today, pretty standard stuff. We'll be talking about our priority state and federal updates. We will be chatting a little bit about some upcoming activities in November, and then hearing from all of you, and so on. So priority updates. For those of you who are new to LAC and the work that we're doing with the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness, 2 years ago at the beginning of this state legislative session, we set our priority updates. We focused on access to state IDs, decriminalizing homelessness, and affordable housing. So each month we just like to give you a bit of an update about what we're doing, and with it being summer recess, there's not a lot to report, but we'll start with Jason and the state ID subgroup.
So the state ID task force had its most recent meeting a week ago from today, actually. And during that call, there was some discussion about how the group wants to move forward with the policy work that's been going on this year. What we're recognizing is that we're running out of time with the elections coming up, and that there's been a series of pieces of legislation that have been introduced that touch on some component of the ID process. The group identified reaching out to Senator O'Brien's office on Senate Bill 404, which is the fee waiver for veterans and people who are homeless. And so the response we've gotten has been very positive from Senator O'Brien's office. They are very keen to sit down with representatives from the task force and talk about the way forward for the bill in the remaining time. So hopefully by later this week, by the end of this week, we'll have some sense of what the timetable is going to look like, but it's very positive news. So I think everybody is pretty happy with at least a way forward at this point. And of course, it'll also be a little bit wait and see once we start having these conversations about what might be possible. So that's the big update for state IDs.
Hoping for some lame duck action, maybe?
Hoping for a little lame duck action. Little duck hunting, yes.
So this is Laurel again on our decriminalization work. We meet every other month at the end of the month. So I've got, if you're interested in joining this subcommittee, all you have to do is email me. Let me know that you want to be on our mailing list, and I'll add you, and you'll receive our information about the meetings and our meeting notes. At our last meeting, which happened in July, the decriminalization subcommittee decided to revisit our efforts earlier this year to collect data from the client perspective about their interactions with the criminal justice system. We did a client questionnaire in February and March and received a poor turnout. We received only 110 or so surveys back, and we felt that we could do a better job of getting information from the client. So we're going to relaunch that. The client questionnaire is a, I believe, 12 or 13 question survey that is administered by staff. It doesn't take too long. It's all multiple choice with 1 or 2 exceptions. And it's really focused on understanding their experience with the police, with the criminal justice system, with access to housing. And that helps inform us as we decide what kind of policy we want to try and look at for statewide implementation and training for the police that we are working with. So we'll be relaunching that in October, and we have decided to make it a little bit easier. We're going to also put it online so that clients can go directly to an online form and fill it out there. We reckon this may provide some less than stellar data back because it's not going to be administered by a staff person, but we hope to get more back, which will ultimately be more helpful, we feel. So that information will go out to all of you later once we relaunch that. We also have another meeting coming up on September 7th in Flint. This is part of our housing and criminal justice kind of listening session that we're doing with Safe and Just Michigan. And this is the 3rd one. We've had one in Detroit and Grand Rapids. So we hope to have a good turnout for this. The first 2 were excellent, and we encourage anybody who's in that area to attend. The registration link, I believe, is cut off on the bottom of that screen, but I'll make sure everybody gets to see that if they would like to register for this meeting on September 7th. And that's all for decriminalization. On affordable housing, this is something that Jason and I both chaired for a subcommittee, and I'll say that our next meeting is coming up pretty quickly. It is Monday, September 10th at 10 a.m. Let me know again if that's a subcommittee that you would like to join, and I'll get you on our mailing list. Do you want to talk about any activities we're doing, Jason?
So in terms of where things are at, I think at our last meeting we had mentioned that we were interested in doing focus groups, and which would lead to a survey. And the good news is that we've done focus groups now with providers. We've done 2 of those. And in so doing, we realized that we'd be best served by holding additional focus groups with private landlords and public landlords. So we are in the process of putting together the focus group with the private landlords first. And then I think we're going to finish off with the public landlords. Laurel and I were just talking last week that given the information we were able to glean from the service provider focus groups, we're feeling pretty comfortable about going ahead and launching the survey. And this would be open to all service providers and getting some feedback about the types of interactions they're having with landlords, types of incentives that either agencies or COCs or local planning bodies, whatever, might be putting on offer. But just to give us a better sense of what the landscape looks like across Michigan, because we know that a lot of this work is happening at a very community level, very community or agency level, and it's sometimes hard for us to keep our fingers on the pulse of what exactly is happening out there. So I think that's pretty covers most of the major things. I'm looking at Laurel now to see if there's anything.
Yeah, we are looking at some fun engagement with policymakers for next year around affordable housing. So doing the focus group and a statewide survey now is really going to inform how we want to engage with them at the beginning of the next session. And on a little housekeeping note, I want to apologize. It looks like my email alerts are popping up on the screen. I don't know if everybody's seeing those or not, but if they are, please ignore them. Thank you. I really hate when that happens on webinars. It drives me nuts. So yeah, I think that's it for affordable housing. Again, let me know if you'd like to join us for our next meeting on September 10th. And that wraps up our policy updates. Feel free, again, if you have questions or thoughts that you want to share with us or the group, to either raise your hand and we can unmute you if you're in a quiet place, or send us questions using the questions box on the toolbar for GoToWebinar. We know we go through stuff pretty quickly, and a lot of this is updates on things that we've been working on for 2 years. So if you need any clarification or have questions, do let us know. So we'll move now to our state updates. And as I mentioned earlier, we are in summer recess, so there's not been a lot going on at the state level. They will be coming back for just a couple days in September, starting September 5th. They have less than 25 days on their session calendar in the House and the Senate. That's due to the election. So there's not going to be a lot of engagement opportunities, we feel, up until after the election, when lame duck, of course, kicks in. And that's when anything can happen. So this year, there's not a lot of bills that we are concerned about or following. There is a bill that was introduced in the House that would increase the rent deposit that is allowed for a landlord to require for a deposit. That has not moved in committee, so I don't know if there's any option of that being a priority in lame duck, but of course that's something we would oppose and come out against. Voter ID bills came out in lame duck in 2016, and they were introduced earlier this year. Depending on what the makeup of our House and Senate and our gubernatorial race, depending on what that looks like, that may be something that comes back in lame duck, which would require that everybody show a photo ID in order to be able to vote. So those are a couple things that we're following, but again, not anything that we are overly concerned with at the moment. Any other updates about state legislation from Eric or Jason, other than the state ID, the bills that you'd mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. So federal is where all the action is right now.
Great. So we have a lot on the agenda under this item. So as Laurel said, if at any point I'm skimming through it fast and you have questions, just raise your hand or type in a question and I'll slow down and try to address that. So feel very comfortable in doing that, because we do try to get through it quickly, but that doesn't mean that we don't want you to ask questions to provide some input as well. So federal updates, just wanted to mention that the Homeless Children Youth Act, which we've talked about at a previous meeting, which is intended to align definitions so that HUD's definition of homelessness is the same as that used in the Department of Education and other federal agencies, has not had any movement that we're aware of at this point. So not really sure whether or not that's going to get further traction. Passed out of committee since the last meeting. I was thinking it passed out of committee at that time. But anyway, nothing coming out of committee. We don't know whether or not there's going to be any movement on that beyond getting out of committee. As you may recall, something that has resurfaced. There was an initiative undertaken in the past on a couple of occasions, and it didn't come to fruition. We'll see whether or not this gets any more legs, and we'll keep you posted on it. Housing Choice Voucher Mobility Demonstration Act of 2018. Some of you may be aware of this, but this is being proposed as a way to help make, as it states, housing choice vouchers mobile, so that individuals would have an opportunity to look at communities of choice, so that they wouldn't be limited in where they would use them. And the idea there is that HUD would work with PHAs, new models for improving that mobility, and also provide counseling to HUD-assisted families to help them or assist them with moving to areas of opportunity. And the idea there is that there are many communities where the housing choice vouchers are not currently providing a level of access to jobs with decent pay, transportation, or health care, et cetera. And this is to help align individuals' needs with the resources that are available in a particular community. The Senate also has a companion bill that they have introduced as well. The House has passed its version. The Senate is still looking for some additional sponsors to that. So that's an exciting opportunity. We'll see what happens with that. The Task Force on the Impact of the Affordable Housing Crisis Act of 2018. Let me make sure I have my documents in order, because I think I got them out of order. Here we go. So it's a bipartisan effort for those who aren't aware of it, and the idea is that we've been talking about the housing crisis for some time, and there are folks in Congress who I think have been hearing that message and understand that from what they learned back in their district. So this is an initiative which actually is pretty exciting, because what it'll do is have a task force get together to be creating recommendations regarding affordable housing. One of the things that's interesting is that they're looking at evaluating to quantify how affordable housing crisis impacts life outcomes and increases costs of non-housing programs at the federal, state, and local level. So in effect, it's saying we actually want to know how the housing crisis is affecting people, but we also want to know how it's affecting the budget. If we're not taking care of this issue, then how are costs being borne by other parts of the budget? So that makes an awful lot of sense. It's saying they're taking it seriously. And when you start talking about dollars and cents and trying to make sure that you're not wasting money by not addressing an issue because you're having to pick up costs elsewhere in the system, and it's bipartisan, I think that's a pretty good sign moving forward. So there is currently a call for sponsors on that, but it's a pretty exciting initiative that they're undertaking.
And Eric, can I chime in on that?
Yeah, please.
So yes, the National Low Income Housing Coalition is asking people to reach out to the members of Congress and ask for additional sponsors. So that would be our two senators. The interesting thing about this, I think, is that it really sets a precedent for us to be looking at and evaluating affordable housing at a large scale. And this is something we've talked about at the state level, and being able to form a committee or a interest group of legislators who want to look at affordable housing in Michigan. And so I'm very excited about seeing this happen at a federal level so that we can set a precedent and get our state legislators to be thinking in the same way and doing the same kind of research.
Yeah, excellent point. Okay, any questions or comments?
None so far?
None yet. Okay, well, we're on track. Let's talk about the Rent Relief Act of 2018.
And Eric, on the screen, I've actually added a chart from the LIC that compares the Rent Relief Act with the next item on the agenda, the Home Act. So that's what everybody should be seeing right now.
Okay, so you've got that. All of you should have heard about either or both of these because they are pretty innovative initiatives being proposed. Kamala Harris came out with the first, and then shortly thereafter, Cory Booker came out with the latter, the Housing Opportunity, Mobility, and Equity Act of 2018. They're both tax credit or tax relief oriented, and you can see using the chart, it gives a description of how that would actually take place. Eligibility in the Rent Relief Act would be to families who are $125,000 or less annually, and then that would be a prorated amount based on what the income levels are. The Cory Booker version is actually looking at folks who are at 80% of the area median income as opposed to a flat dollar amount cap and then tapering down on a prorated basis. So these are both interesting. Don't know which one is going to be getting the edge over the other. Have either one of you heard any buzz about either one? I'm talking to Jason and Laurel.
At this time, I think
It's pretty early.
yeah.
So the House version is also available. The House version is 6671, and neither has passed yet. But again, it's something very different than what we've seen in the past. But it is a tax credit, so that may be an uphill battle. But it may open up some discussion about what the needs are of folks on the ground as to why this would even be introduced. So we're encouraged that dialogue will take place as a result of that. Okay, affirmatively furthering fair housing. This is a policy issue within HUD. Again, hopefully most of you have heard about this. And in essence, what it's talking about is HUD withdrawing its support for a rule that it had implemented, actually looking for modification on it. The idea of the affirmatively furthering fair housing rule was intended to help correct some issues relating to fair housing and trying to recalibrate so that more opportunities were made available in communities with respect to housing. The housing secretary is not in support of it, and so he has, he through his administration has pushed things through relatively quickly to seek to modify the rule. So there are opportunities for folks to provide input, which I would encourage everybody to consider. I don't know if we sent a link out on that, but there will be.
Yeah, so I'll just address really quickly what you guys should be seeing on your screen for those on the webinar of what Eric discussed. There was an action at the middle of August. The court dismissed the request from Texas and another entity that was trying to stop HUD from removing the assessment tool, which was the key item that would allow communities to assess and investigate the need in their communities and then be able to address fair housing. Because the court dismissed that request, HUD was able to move forward with their intent to change. And so they published on August 16th, this is what Eric was mentioning, the advance notice of proposed rulemaking. This is what communities and stakeholders are able to provide comments on. And I did link that in the agenda, but obviously with the webinar, you can't click on that on the screen. But it will be in the information that comes out afterwards. And so they have 5 items that they are proposing, and those are all on your screen. And NLIHC does a great job. In case we didn't say it earlier, they're our partner at the national level. We're one of the state partners in Michigan that allows us to engage with them on federal issues in a really thoughtful and strategic way. They have excellent information on this. And so they have made public their comments on the ANPR and some of their concerns. So some of the issues on this, as we know with government, the language that is put out there is always very positive in terms of trying to make it look like the most obvious and appropriate thing to be doing. But as advocates, we always know that there's something that we need to look into and need to read between the lines a little bit. So some of those things that we are concerned about is that even though this language makes it sound like it's going to be a more streamlined, efficient way to address fair housing, under the affirmatively furthering fair housing, there are some concerns. So I've seen some articles from Ben Carson and from the administration that is talking about opening up the market, decreasing regulations, of course, allowing for zoning that has development for affordable housing in mind. Those are all kind of bullet number 4 on the screen. But what that does not do is keep into mind, even though it may increase affordable housing, it does not provide that anti-discriminatory factor that is the root of fair housing. And so it does not further the mission of making sure that anything that we're doing regarding housing and providing access to housing is fair and open to people of color and other people in our communities. And so some of this may look good on paper, but we really need to recognize the underlying need in our communities for a tool and a program that provides housing for everybody.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You said it very nicely. Well,
This is something that I'm rather,
yeah.
I'm rather disappointed that it's going this way and moving this way this quickly.
Well, what is disappointing, number one, it is being pushed through relatively quickly, which is always an indication that maybe you need to slow down and actually talk to people on the ground. So it's really, I think, imperative for folks to weigh in on it. And I think that the period ends in October 15th, for folks to be able to make comments. But I think people shouldn't wait on it and take action as soon as possible. HUD actually developed a report which basically is indicating that the tool, which has been used for less than 3 years, is not effective. And unfortunately, it's not based on facts. There are some things in it that are not accurate or are twisted a little bit, I guess. So it's not really a helpful document because it's not really a fair assessment of what's happened. You know, particularly when you have a short term to examine the impact of something, and if the tool was only implemented for less than 3 years, the front end is going to be a slow end load. Where number one, you're not going to be implementing it at full speed, and number two, you're going to be tweaking. So you know that your outcomes are not going to be the perfect outcomes that you're hoping for, particularly not that early in its existence. So it really, I think, is bad policy personally, and it's really missing the mark of what the tool was intended to do. So that's why we want things to slow down and make sure that there's a fair assessment of its implementation and what is intended, and whether or not any major changes to the rule will adversely impact what the original intent was.
And I'll also add that obviously fair housing, we have excellent fair housing centers across our state that are leading on this issue and are great resources. We are not the expert on this. This is just something that impacts the work that we do with
Hey everybody, this is Jason. We lost sound on our end, so Laura is actually calling back in. Yeah, everybody's commenting that we lost sound, we lost the volume, everything else. Yeah, not entirely sure what happened.
Are you muted?
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, I think we're back. Sorry about that. If you can hear us okay, the sound is back, and if you are having more trouble.
Lots of yays.
Okay.
And Laurel,
All right.
Laurel is no longer silent.
Yeah, good luck with that. All right. Sorry, guys. It's rather funny that just as we were checking on audio, we lost our call.
Was it funny or was it on purpose?
They're listening.
Dun, dun, dun.
We were being critical of the government.
Yeah. Big Brother is always watching.
So hopefully you guys kind of got the last of our fair housing talk. We're going to move on to budget now.
Just in case, I think I'll start the federal update all over again. Everybody okay with that? Just kidding. So now we're at the budget, and we're talking about the T-HUD bill in particular. What happened in the process, as we reported previously, the administration's proposed budget was not followed. The House came in with higher numbers in all categories, even or above in all categories, and the Senate came in with higher, even or higher than the House in most cases as well. So very positive outcome for us. What we're seeing is that there's a continued belief that investment in homeless services and in housing are appropriate and necessary, which is very encouraging, and I think validates all of the communication that we're all having with our elected officials. So kudos to those who have reached out in the past, and I just want to recognize the fact that that can make a difference. So if you have not done so in the past, I would encourage you to think about it. But this is an opportunity for us to be engaging with our members of Congress, and this, I think, is the result of our ongoing communication with them. I can give some highlights to things that really are very positive outcomes that I want us to be aware of. And the Trump administration, for example, had some rent policy changes they were proposing. Those got the kibosh. Regulatory reform got the kibosh. The administration had also wanted to eliminate the National Housing Trust Fund, and that's been funded for renewal. See. Do we have the chart?
On the screen, you should
Yeah,
be seeing the
I'm
chart.
not looking at the chart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see there in the third and the fourth column, the House and the Senate versions there. And again, everything is far more robust than what the administration had put out. And we don't have the final figures in the chart because it'll go to conference to work itself out. So I don't know how long that is going to take, but what is encouraging is that all of the numbers that we see, whether it's the House or the Senate side, are very positive. We're going to be advocating for the higher amounts, of course, in all those categories. But I think that we'll be in a pretty good position once they actually come to an agreement. And I don't see that there were any areas where massive differences between the House and the Senate where we would feel that there would be figures that the House might push for that we would feel were inadequate or inappropriate. So all in all, very good news for us.
I think the Senate did have slightly better numbers than they typically do, so they'll probably come out with stronger support for the Senate version. One thing that's not on the chart that we've discussed in the past is the intent to see work requirements, rent caps, and other damaging proposals included in this budget process. That was something that the administration wanted to see when they released their budget. The House denied them, the Senate denied them. So we're very glad to see that those are not going to be incorporated into the budget process, but they're still being introduced through the congressional process and are something that we are following, and we may have to come out against depending on how far they make it this session. But they are not in the budget, which is good news.
Anybody have any questions? I mean, it's just a quick overview because it's not final numbers yet, but I think it's encouraging. We're moving in the right direction this year. Who knows about next year, but for this budget, we're feeling good about it.
We're seeing increases for the first time in a long time, so yeah. No questions?
All quiet now that the audio is working as it should.
Well, it's good to know people were paying attention.
Yes, there was a lot of concern.
So thanks, Eric. I mean, as we kind of joked early on, there's a lot happening at the federal level, so we'll be monitoring and updating everybody on that when there's opportunity to engage. But do take a look at some of the links in the agenda that was sent out earlier today if you want to read up on anything in more detail. And as I mentioned, the National Low Income Housing Coalition is an excellent resource for updates on these items. So we'll move on to our next agenda item, which are the additional MICA updates. And I'll just cover the first one really quickly. Every 2 years, whenever there's an election in the state, we do a candidate survey, and that is just focused on our state seats. We focused just on the House and the Senate this year. And this is our opportunity to engage with candidates. So we did it post-primary, before general election, to understand what they know about homelessness and housing instability in the state, put forward some ideas, engage what their interests are with priorities and on policy, and then we distribute that within their districts. We let the COC and local planning body leadership know what those results are once we've completed the process. And we also use that to inform our engagement with legislators next year, those that are successful in their bid for state seats. And so we'll take that information and understand kind of where our new legislators are in terms of their understanding, their awareness, their interest, and then it will guide us with our policies. So we launched that last week. We will be doing it through September 7th. Our deadline is Friday, September 7th. I have multiple points where I will be sending reminders to candidates. So my request of this group is that if you have great relationships with any candidates in your district, again, just state, House, and Senate, please reach out to them, let them know that this is a survey that they should have received, and encourage them to fill it out. We have an online option, a paper version. For those who we couldn't secure email addresses for, we may be actually mailing a paper version. So if that's the case, you may talk to someone who hasn't yet received it if they haven't made their email public. But this is really going to be a great way for us to kind of set the stage for next year. So please help us out, let your candidates know. And that includes new candidates and incumbents, even if they've been in the House or Senate for a while. Definitely let them know that we'd like them to fill out this survey. Homeless Awareness Month. It's coming up.
Note the word month.
Yes.
I'll say it again, month.
So Jason, you want to talk about why we changed it to month and what's going on with that?
Sure. So, yes, as you heard, it's Homeless Awareness Month. And some of you already participated in the first webinar that we offered. So a little bit of, but for those of you who didn't, a little bit of backstory. The last couple of years, we've noticed that we've had communities across Michigan who have had a lot of interest in doing events for homeless, for the national campaign, so the National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week, that the National Coalition for the Homeless and their companion student group have been coordinating pretty much for time immemorial at this point. And what we noticed is that communities were really struggling with identifying their events, with coming up with branding. For example, we had some communities who were doing events at the end of October last year and calling that their Homeless Awareness Week, because that was when the sites they needed were available, and that's when the people they needed were available. So rather than cause folks consternation and or any confusion, we decided we're going to go with Homeless Awareness Month, recognizing that communities will pretty much be doing what they've always done. They're going to do their events when they do them, but recognizing that those events are going to be occurring all throughout November, all across the state. So we're making the push to rebrand a little bit. I think the other thing that's happened is that with the national campaign, we've had far more communities here in Michigan buy-in than other states have seen as well. So trying to capitalize on that momentum and create more of a sense of community so that folks have see their common interests. So along those lines, we have created a private Facebook group, whose numbers have swelled. I think we're now at something like 160 to 170-ish members of that group. And this is targeted for folks who are interested in organizing events at their local community or agency, however you want to define it. We organized the group last year with the intent of kind of having it be timely around November, but what we found is we've kept it open year-round. The numbers have grown, interest has grown, and now as we're gearing up to go into our second November with the group, we're getting a lot of requests for folks to join. So if you're not that right person in your community or within your agency who organizes events, but you know who that person is, feel free to let them know about the Facebook group. They can get in contact with either Laurel or myself, and we can send them the URL if they're having problems finding the Facebook group and making the request themselves.
It's also pretty visible on our Facebook page, which is at Am I Homeless, in case that's an easier way to find it.
Yeah. So that's one big change, or I should say another big change from last year is we have the support network that we're really encouraging folks to become part of. Handful of folks who have reached out, and said that they're interested in organizing a certain type of event. The response has been immediate and wide-reaching in terms of, doesn't matter where you are with the Facebook group, you can be up in the UP and say, hey, we want to organize a Homeless Connect, and you'll have folks from all across the state who are able to help you out. So the other big thing that we've changed up with this year as well is we've always done webinars around helping communities organize events and kind of think outside of their proverbial box and think about doing new things, changing things up. So we changed up the timetable this year. We had our first webinar that was focused on best practices for community engagement, which I think one of our participants today was part of that panel, and it was very well received. It was very high turnout, and folks have been we're definitely interested in what the panelists had to share. The next webinar that we're going to do in the series is going to be focused on engaging with policymakers and looking at best practices. We've got 2 of the 3 panelists confirmed at this point, and we're definitely going to be mixing it up. We have a panelist from a homeless youth provider down in the Washington County area, and we have a staffer from a congressional office here in Lansing who's going to be presenting. So keep your eyes posted for that announcement once we get the final presenter nailed down. We're looking at mid to late because we're kind of assuming that communities will already be working on organizing events. This is more about amplifying the impact that you're having and making sure that if you haven't reached out to policymakers and members of the media, that you're thinking about ways that you could do that to make sure that they're coming out, especially this being an election year. We know that, it's a double-edged sword. They want to be out, but they're also getting flooded with requests because, of course, their name is out there. So how to make sure that you're providing them with an opportunity to really get, kind of more bang for their buck. So that's what we've got in the works. And then some folks have already asked about messaging and some other things. And we are going to be providing that. And of course, we are going to be providing a poster as well. And I'm looking over at Laurel, and she can give a quick update about we're changing up the poster this year as well. And Laurel, you want to let folks know what that change is going to look like?
Yeah, so on your screen, you should see our announcement. This is a new thing for us. Every year we produce a poster. We have it available online for download, and we distribute it at the Homeless Summit in October. That's something that's developed in-house. It doesn't necessarily, it's not amazing, but it is a good piece for getting messaging out and getting people talking, and it ties the whole state together. And so this year we decided, let's step it up. Let's try and actually get an image that captures the message in a way that really resonates. And so we're doing a poster contest. This year we are focusing on individuals who've experienced homelessness or staff and providers and leadership who work on homelessness issues. And we're asking you guys to put together a design that you think really tells the message that you want around this year's theme, which is homelessness can happen to anyone. This was selected via our Facebook poll, which was live last week. We started with that Facebook group that Jason mentioned and narrowed it down to 2 options and then went far and wide. We had another option for our theme, which is housing is hope. It was a matter of 1 vote that put this one ahead. So obviously it's a message that people felt very strongly about. They felt strongly about the other one as well, so we might revisit that for next year. But the poster contest is live now, and I'll be sending out the announcement later today. And we encourage you guys to, if you are artistic, creative, if it's something that you personally want to do, we encourage you to submit your own design. So we also encourage you to post this in your shelters, your agencies, distribute it among your clients. We will be doing a $100 Visa gift card, but through the process, submissions are then the entrants who supply there are granting us permission to redistribute and to own the artwork moving forward. So there's no compensation beyond that $100 Visa card for the winner, and there's no compensation for those who are not chosen to be the winner this year. But it's still a $100 Visa gift card. It's putting your name out there. It's really putting out the message that you want to see. In terms of the fine print, we will have that available online. I don't want to get into all the details, but we're looking for a poster design that is very visually appealing, captures that theme, and that someone is willing to have on legislative doors, because they do go up in legislative offices, go up on windows in different agencies, can be distributed for part of events that happen with businesses and with other stakeholders and communities. So like I said, we're very excited about it. We're hopeful that we get some good submissions, some really creative ones that kind of tell that message that homelessness can happen to anyone. And the deadline, I don't have it on the screen, but it is about 3 weeks out. So there's not a huge amount of time for people to put their creative hats on and submit something, but hopefully that's enough time for us to get some good ideas. Anything else about Homeless Awareness Month, the poster or otherwise, Jason?
I think we hit all of the major talking points so far.
All right, so be on the lookout for the poster announcement and let us know what kind of activity planning for Homeless Awareness Month. For us, November is a time when we like to look forward and we like to convene the Legislative Action Committee during Homeless Awareness Month so we can all come together, or those who are available in person, and talk about what we've been able to do and what we want to do moving forward. So how are we doing on time? All right, so for today, what we wanted to do is give you an update on what our plans are for our activities for November, and then talk about next year and get some feedback from all of you guys. So the first thing that we want to acknowledge is that we're nearing the end of our first session of policy priorities. So in 2016, we formed the Legislative Action Committee, did the survey to identify policy priorities, and for the past 2 years, we've been working at the state level to try and implement change on those priorities. We have an opportunity now to revisit those and to look forward with the 2019-2020 session. Because of term limits, we have a lot of new folks who will be coming in who will need to be educated and informed and hopefully put on the right path to see some really great change happen. But that means that we need to be very strategic in what we want to put before them. We can't just throw everything. We have to be thoughtful in what priorities we would like to work on. So our goal is that we will be doing a survey among our Legislative Action Committee members, of which there are over 200 who receive our alerts, asking for ideas about what our policy priorities for next session should be. And one thing that we did last year is we went broad. We had state IDs, decriminalizing homelessness, affordable housing as our priorities. And that didn't allow us to really get in deep with specific ideas. So this year we're going to be more targeted and specific. And to give you an idea of some of the things that we're thinking about, we're going to launch our next poll, which should be open on your screen. And I encourage you all to go ahead and select. The question is, what are the top 3 state priorities you'd like to see in our policy priorities for next session? This is not exhaustive. There's a lot of ideas that we want to put out there that we will be doing through this broader survey. But we want to get your ideas right now. We are live, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And people are submitting?
Yeah, I think people are taking their time to read because there was definitely a lag between
the
poll versus when people started voting. So
okay. And
you can sense the drama unfold.
And again, this does not mean these are the top 5 or the top 3 that we're going to go with. We want to put some different ideas out there and see what people thought. So how are we looking?
We got about half. Oh, okay. Never mind.
Our numbers are going up?
Our numbers are going up.
Good, good.
We've had about 3/4 of the group respond. So I'd say maybe let's give it another 5 or 10 seconds. I don't think we've ever reached 100% response rate on any of our polls, but we're in the 80s now. So
good.
We're getting there.
While people are finishing up, I will say that this is something we'll have more conversation around. So as you're thinking about this and thinking about these 5 options and picking your top 3, if there's something that you're like, man, I don't know why they didn't include this. This is what I'm passionate about and what I want to work on. Let us know. We will be doing our survey in the next several weeks, so we have time to kind of brainstorm and get ideas. So email one of us, whichever one of us you have contact information for, and let us know what your ideas are.
So we have maxed out. I think there's maybe 2 people who are likely so involved in lunch that they did not want to take that or they're dealing with some other issue. So, in no particular order, dedicated funding for the Housing and Community Development Fund, 82% of folks responded that is by far the top priority.
Good.
The next 2 are eviction expungement at 71%, and incentives for landlords, which could include a damage fund, a tax credit, take a lot of different shapes. That's also 71%. Then fee waivers for state IDs and vital docs, 47. And then last but not least is 18% with the Homeless Bill of Rights.
Great. Thanks, guys. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
All right. So getting back to our agenda, we will, as I said, be launching that survey soon. And the goal is to be able to then come together in November for an in-person meeting of the Legislative Action Committee on November 14th. And let me just kind of chat through what we're thinking about with this right now. The invitation and the details will be sent out later, but this is what we're looking at for the moment. We're wanting to do an all-day activity broken up into 2 parts, so you can participate in one, both, or neither. But in the morning, we'd like to bring together the Legislative Action Committee members, those who have been involved or are new to the committee who would like to be more involved, to have a closer session, just like we've done the past 2 years, where we can really strategize and brainstorm. And that's when the policy priority survey will come in, and as a group, we'll identify what we would like to really see and focus on for the next legislative session. So that will be in the morning in Lansing on November 14th. And then we're looking at doing something different and new this year. In going around and talking to people around the state, we've discovered that there definitely is interest in advocacy, but everybody's at different levels in terms of their comfort level and what they think they should be doing and how involved they want to be. So we'd like to do a training, just a half-day training, and this is something that could be open to people beyond the Legislative Action Committee, but of course would also be open to this group. And so if I could ask us to do our next poll, Jason's ahead of me, help us identify what you would be interested in with regards to that afternoon advocacy training. So we have a couple things that we've been thinking about. Let us know, and you can pick as many as you want. I believe I've said that correctly. Let us know which ones you would like to see in that training.
Once again, we're seeing the lag. People are obviously taking their time to process.
And this is a great way for us to also kind of understand where you guys are. I mean, the Advocacy 101 really is something for people who are just getting their feet wet or would like a refresher. So that's not going to be something that everybody's interested in. You may already have a really strong sense of your messaging and framing. So yeah, this is really helpful for us.
All right, so about half of you have responded so far. I don't know if folks are covering lunch eating or what's going on, but we'll give it maybe another 10 or 15 seconds for a few other folks to check in if they're able to do so.
So you should be filling this out even if you don't plan on coming because you can't come.
Mm-hmm.
Think in terms of what would be valuable to you if you were able to attend.
Exactly.
So don't exclude yourself from the voting simply because you're not sure if you're going to be going.
And I think we've pretty much maxed out. We've got who we're going to get. So let's see. So there's a tie for 69% for message framing, speaking with public and decision makers. And
Character limit.
yeah, yeah. I feel like there are some articles probably left out that should go in between there. And then overview of national and state issues / priorities. So yeah, that's also 69%. And then right behind that is a presentation on best practices from a legislator / staff member at 62%. And then we've got role playing and practicing in small groups at 46%, and advocacy 101 at 31%.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. One last poll. So as you know, MICA is a nonprofit, so we fundraise, and we also are able to put on these kind of activities with a small budget, which means that there are times when we really do need to be able to compensate our speakers and a travel request through charging a fee for people to participate in our activities. So let us know, how much would you be willing to pay for this half-day training? And with this, we are thinking about bringing in a national presenter, which does have costs and does have some additional value that we'd be providing for the day. So this time, just pick the one. Let us know what you personally or what your agency would be able to support and think appropriate to support financially for this. Like I said, this is an activity that would be open to people beyond just the Legislative Action Committee. It would be open to any advocate who wants to work on issues of homelessness.
And in this regard, are using you as a focus group.
Yes, you guys are our focus group. This will help us determine. So those are kind of just numbers to give us a sense, but that's not anything that we're set on at the moment.
So let's see, we'll give everybody maybe another 10 or 15 seconds. We've got about 2/3 of you have responded, and we know we're starting to bump up against the 1 o'clock window as well.
Yep.
And this is helpful to us, so please take a quick look and vote quickly. So a few more folks have voted. I'll give you another 5 seconds, and I'll go ahead and close it out. We do have over 2/3 now. So
thank you, guys.
all right. So here we go. 58% said $25 is reasonable. 5% said they could only attend if it's free, and 17% said that $50
Okay.
was as high as they could go.
So it looks like thanks, guys. That's very, very helpful. As I said, once we have the agenda and more information, we will be sending out the details. But do put November 14th on your calendar in Lansing for both or one or the other, the Legislative Action Committee meeting in the morning and the training in the afternoon. All right, so 5 minutes left. Did we have anybody who wanted to give any kind of updates from the field?
Well, so this is the tricky part of the day where I kind of feel like it's like an NPR show where we had folks that say they were interested at the beginning, but we don't know who those folks were. So now it's like the audience participation part. So we have to see if those folks are interested in sharing. Now that you've heard us talk for nearly an hour.
So should we have them raise their hand to let us know?
I was just going to say, the easiest thing to do is probably raise your hand. That will be an indication to us that you are in a place that you could talk without wailing babies or construction equipment or something in the background, and we can unmute you. So, Mr. Ryan Hannon, looks like you are going to be the first person.
Oh, Ryan, looks like we ran out of time. Just kidding, Ryan.
Ryan, the issue I'm running into is I do not have to unmute you. I just sent you the audio pin, which I think you have to enter. I see that you're on call, but I have no controls over your phone. So I'm not sure what's going on there. If you enter the pin that I just sent, then that should allow me to unmute you so you can share. While we're waiting for Ryan, and thank you, Ryan, for playing along. If anybody else is interested in the interim, go ahead and raise your hand. It's up. There we go. Hey, Ryan, you're about to go live.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Thank you for unmuting me. When I clicked on the poll, I thought it was asking who wanted to share these advocacy updates with their community, and then I realized it was who wants to share with you guys. But that brings me to my next point. I did get permission to share with my COC to be on the agenda to share our updates, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, please
The
do.
LAC updates?
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. But I will tell you that we'd love to actually be a part of your COC meetings. If you'd like to have the, MICA representation there, we'd be happy to do that.
That would be awesome.
And I think that within,
Go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say, within our means, I think that we open that up to other communities as well. Obviously, We can't attend everybody's COC meeting, but if others are interested in having Micah come out at some point and talk about LAC, I think that that's something that we would be open to discussing with you. Now, Ryan, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I can try to arrange for you guys to come, or at least to be able to come.
That would be
It might
wonderful.
I know that our 10 county COC does like a webinar format type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be easy, that part. But then there's local work group meetings as well.
Oh, right. Yep.
Well, let us
And-
know
Yeah.
what we can do for you.
Thank you, I will. And I also wanted to add that I have some good relationships with candidates for state and house, state house and senate. So if there's anything you want me to pass along to them, I believe it was be looking for the survey to those people.
Let me send that to you. That would be great. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. Anything else?
We
That's-
do have another person. Oh, sorry, Ryan. I was just going to say we do have one other person who has raised their hand and expressed an interest in sharing as well.
Okay, mute me.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Oh, I think you gotta mute yourself. You got it.
I got it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Robert, you are on the line. Hello, welcome.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Bobby Drigo Jones. I'm from Michigan's Children. This isn't as much an update from the community as kind of an update from what we're working on our side with, kind of kids and families issues and housing. And then a question for you all about the survey that you mentioned. We're seeing a lot of opportunity and potential in the next year or two around some child welfare reform, reform of our foster care system with some different federal legislation that's been passed and some other things going on at the state level. And we understand that the housing plays a huge role in a lot of neglect cases. And we're working with some people to try to suss out how many cases are in the child welfare system are in have housing as a factor involved. And I was wondering if that survey that you're passing out on sort of the criminalization of homelessness asked any questions about housing instability and getting involved with child welfare or anything kind of along that system in addition to criminal justice.
Thanks for that question. We had something about CPS on the original version of our questionnaire. We've now gone through multiple rounds of it. We did a pilot in 3 communities where that was a question, and it was not consistently answered, and we decided that there were too many questions on the survey to include it once we went statewide. So there's not currently anything on there, but that's something that I think we would be very open to talking with you about, trying to figure out where we can get that information elsewhere.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to have you join us with LAC too. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having us.
Is there anything else from the group?
Nobody else has raised their hand.
And we're after 1 o'clock.
But everybody's still on the call. Nobody has dropped off.
Oh, you guys are rock stars.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll wrap up and say, if you had things that you wanted to say but you couldn't get the technology to work, you just didn't want to talk in front of the group, you can email them to us. We'll send them out to everybody. And then our next meeting is scheduled. We do it every month, 4th Monday of the month from noon to 1. So it will fall on September 24th. So if you have something you'd like to discuss at that September meeting, you can also send us that in advance and we'll add it to the agenda. And if there's nothing else, we can let everybody go. Eric, Jason?
Well, all set.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for the extra time, and
Appreciate your participation.
have a great holiday next weekend.
Take care.